Welcome to another Talking Bout video. In this video I want to cover the topic of construction and construction sites. We already discussed this topic in another video, but only barely scratched the surface, and today I want to go into a little more detail, so you can create buildings that are supposed to be undone, even though, well, they are supposed to be undone even though you won't place another block on the build itself. So there are a few things that you should keep in mind when doing this, and I'm going to use this build here, this fort that I recently built, in order to explain the separate steps and the separate techniques to you. And in my opinion, it's very important because it adds dynamics and motion to a server and a city. Now let's have a closer look at what we can do in order to achieve this unfinished or construction-ish look. So first of all, what I did to start this build was to start a wall. So I imagined a rough structure for this region, and I started building this kind of wall part over here. And I built it all the way over here. Then what I started with after that was to simply tear a hole in the wall. So there was the crenellations already built over here, but I took them out and I kind of made a little bit of a roundish hole. It doesn't necessarily have to be roundish, and I took out a few chunks over here, and I placed a few stairs over here and all the way across, so that it doesn't look like a perfect circle that was taken out, or pretty much that hasn't been built yet. We have to say it like that. Then also what's very important is, as you can see on the ground, the randomized ground all over the place. As we fly over here, it's pretty much everywhere. So a randomized ground made out of smooth stone, out of cobblestone, gravel of course, and at some places where there is a road next to it, there's also a little bit of the stone slabs. So that's very important, and if this was all grass or all stone, it would simply look weird. So what I then did was to add this kind of thingy over here, and it's a kind of smaller wall, and there's supposed to be a second story up here that's still not being, well, they haven't even begun building it, but you kind of get the impression that something else is going to be up there. As you can see, there's obviously a crane over here, as there are a few cranes all around the build. I think 3 or 4 I have at this construction site. And what also makes sense is to put building materials, so a pile of stone, or as you can see here, a stack of logs next to it or in the vicinity of the cranes, because you would usually use the cranes to heave something up. So what you also can do, I wouldn't do it necessarily a lot, but at certain points it makes sense. So for example, to add cracked stone. Since this building or this fort is being built, the stone will pretty much be new, so it wouldn't make too much sense to have cracked stone bricks all over the place. But at some place it makes sense. For example, if the workers are heaving up a little bit of the stone up here to put it up and over to on the crenellations, and because of the wind or of a clumsy worker, the stones crash into the crenellations and leave them cracked. That makes sense. As well as, for example, you can see here on the ground, there's also cracked stone brick, simply because of the weight of the crane, so it pressures down on the ground and cracks the stone. That makes sense, at least that's what I think. And except for these things, so basically what I'm trying to say is, try and imagine why there should be cracked stone brick at the position that you're placing it. And if you think it makes sense, then just do it. Also, one thing, this is something that a builder from my server, or from our server, did, whose name is Jimno. Pretty neat thing to do. So as you can see here, there's the kind of framework from the lower floor, and over here there's the floor for the second story about to be built. But they started at the borders, at the well, yeah, from the sides and are advancing to the middle, but still aren't done with the first layer for the floor. So you can see you could fall through, but we're not, because we know how to mind the surroundings. Also, moving on to the next topic, which is scaffolding. What you can see here all around the build is that I used scaffolding at a lot of places. So for example here, it's a little bit to, well, stabilize the hillside so an avalanche isn't, like a small avalanche from here, isn't releasing. And also this kind of indicates the position where also a wall is going to be. The wall which I started over here, as you can see, it's over here still with a few missing bricks. But therefore you see that there's supposed to be something like a wall over there. And with the scaffolding, I roughly kind of give you the impression where the wall is going to be in the future. Or, well, where it should be if this build was ever to be continued or to be completed. So I did that over here, and pretty much at, well, a lot of the regions of this construction sites, as you can see here. And of course also on the towers that are under construction. Now what I did here was to start with this tower, or pretty much with these frames, and then added a little bit of the tower. I imagined the tower, what it should like roughly when it's done, and started with the frames. Then after a few blocks I started simply building this one side up, but leaving the other side down. I added the scaffolding once around. As you can see, these poles, or these fence poles, don't always end at the same height. That in my opinion adds a lot of dynamics, movement, whatever. And also, as you can see, these kind of walkways or these stabilizing cross beams here, they don't always end at the same layer that they started at. So here it's a little bit higher, so that once again gives the whole thing a little bit more of a moved, of a look under motion. And what I then did was simply to finish the tower on the other side. Now I could have simply taken this and put it on the other side as well, so that both towers are under construction. But also one thing that you should keep in mind is that you shouldn't leave all the buildings or the building parts of the build unfinished. You should kind of spoiler what the build looks like in the end. So by building this tower up until it's done and leaving this still under construction, if you walk through here, you kind of can imagine what the build, so in this case the gateway, will look like if the tower was completed. But you still see it as under construction. And this way you have to use a little bit of your imagination, and using that, you could kind of imagine what this place looks like, or what it would look like if it was done. So what I'm trying to say is, at least finish a few parts of the area and leave other parts completely under construction. Okay, moving on to the other side. Well, we can see here pretty much everything that I just said is also being used over here. So we have the randomization on the ground. We have the kind of unfinished floor for the second story over here with the framework down there. We have the scaffolding, which is kind of stabilizing the hillside where this build is on. There's still a little bit of scaffolding on this side of the building. And this tower over here, for example, is almost done, but not completely. So you can see the roof is missing, at least on 3 sides. So this is once again a thing that I did. This side is completed, but the others aren't. So you can kind of imagine what the tower looks like if the rest of the roof was there. But still, it's missing. Okay. Moving on over here, there's gonna be a little bit more, so this is pretty much a construction site under construction, so I'm not completely done with the construction site. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of material piles over here and a road that goes down there so that it can be supplied from down there. But yeah, so there's gonna be a material place over here. What you can see here is the walls. So I started over here once again with the regular walls with the completed crenellations, and then went down here, and I simply took it down a little bit more until it reaches, well, the ground. Once again with the scaffolding still pretty much all around the build, and no details in the walls. So as you can see over here, there's already details in the wall, but since it's only being built on this side, there's no details at all. What you should take care of or mind is, as you can see, there's always a kind of direction that the wall is decreasing in. So for example, if we take this wall part, we start high and end low on the right hand side. But I didn't just take stairs and went up in a staircasey way, like this, or even worse, like this. But what I rather did was to make it, well, kind of weird and odd looking. So for example, instead of simply going one step up, I went a step down, and wait a second, I'm gonna need a slab. And on this side, for example, you could add it like that, and if you then replace the bottom thingies with stone brick, then this looks like there's an increase from the right hand side to the left hand side, but still it looks, well, more random than it looked before when you simply go up in a straight way or in a staircasey way. Also, what I think is kind of important is to add a road, or pretty much, well, some kind of access to the building site that is a little bit fortified. Well, fortified is the wrong way, but where you have, for example, like here, planks on the ground. The planks, as you can see, are randomized with different colors, so it's not boring to look at. But for example, here they placed the planks downhill, so for example, if it rains, this earth over here doesn't turn into mud and simply washes down the hill, but rather, even while it's raining, they could walk on the wood down here and transport the goods, even though, well, the poor workers who have to work in the rain. But these are the Middle Ages, so they're screwed. Over here we have pretty much everything combined in one little portion that I explained to you earlier. So we have the randomization on the ground, we have material piles, we have the scaffolding which is supporting the hillside, we have walls that are being built even already with a little bit of a detailed version over here. Still it's randomized, and you can imagine that there's probably gonna be a little bit of the wall part going to this part over here. And as we go back to this side, we once again see that this is probably gonna be one wall transition. And over here, there's probably going to be a wall also that's going to continue all the way up to this tower. So as I said, if you take a look at this, and especially after I just told you a lot about it, is that you can kind of imagine the parts that aren't there, but that are going to be there. So you see that this is probably going to be another wall. You see that this tower is probably going to look like the one on the right. You see that this tower is probably, because of the shape, going to be like this. And therefore, your imagination kind of adds to the build. It kind of adds parts to the build that aren't even there, simply because I kind of teased it a little bit, and your brain simply finished it itself. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And if you use all these things and put them into one build, of course you could make a bigger fort, you could make small buildings that look like they're under construction, you could make a whole village that's still under construction with a few builds, like a few houses that aren't done. You can do a lot of things, and well, I hope you do. So have fun with that. I hope you found this video to be interesting and to be informative, and with that, there is, I guess, nothing left to say from me, but I've been Madness64, and as always, please rate, comment, subscribe, join the crew, become made today, to see you next time. Bye bye.